Hi soulmate, so today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how I made this beautiful kaftan. Hello, I'm ID Sparks Maid. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining, welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for sticking with us. So this is the brocade fabric I'll be working with. I used a total of 4 yards of the brocade fabric. Now I'll just quickly go ahead and turn my fabric into 2 and then further turn it again into 4. But before I do that, I'll go ahead and measure the length out I'll be working with, because the fabric is actually a bulky one. So I'll first of all go ahead to measure out the length that I'm working with and then cutting the extra out. Now there's little extra because my client is quite tall, like the picture you've seen, but I would just cut out the little extra and see how I can work with the fabric so that I can have a little scarf for her and also still have my this shawl collar in front. Okay, so now this is the final length. I worked with a total length of 64 for her, so the remaining extra length I'm going to be cutting off and managing it for a little scarf. And then when I'm done, I'll fold into 4. Yes, as usual, your fabric should be folded into 4, so I'll go ahead and just fold into 4. Now when I'm done folding into 4, the next thing I'm going to do is to take my measurement down. So yeah, you can see that the length has been cut off to the desired length that I'm working with, and because of the length of this dress, my table isn't so long, so I'm just going to be managing my table. Yeah, so okay, let's get right to it. So I'll first of all go ahead and measure her shoulders. Her shoulder is 8 inches, so I'll mark 8 inches, and then the width of the pleats that I want to do for this kaftan, I'm working with 7 inches. That means I'm going to be using 3.5, and then the length of the sleeves that I'm working with, I used an extra 11 inches. Then I'll come down by my chest point. I'm coming down by 11 inches for her chest line, because it is a kaftan, you do not want it to be fitted, so you cannot work with your exact chest point. Okay, so you can use 11 or 12 inches. So I came down by 11 inches for this client, and yes, her bust is 41.5. Yes, that's her bust. Okay, so now it depends on how wide you want your sleeves to be. Okay, for me this is okay, and then I went ahead to create the width of how wide I want my bubu to be. But if you want your sleeves to be longer than what you saw, you would extend this sleeve length to the end of your fabric. Now when I'm done, I will just go ahead and mark my waistline. Now this waistline is just a gauge for the length of my pleats, that is the kaftan design or the Agbada design, where it is going to stop. So it's going to be stopping on my waistline. So I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder and then repeat where my pleat will take place. Remember that we are working with a total pleat of 7 inches, which is 3.5 when it's on fold. So it's absolutely your choice. You can use 2, you can use 4, which if you fold it to 2 will give you 2, or you can use 5, which is 2.5. And then I'll go ahead to mark out how penciled I want the lower part to be. Now also on this lower part, since there's going to be a slit in front, you can make your cowl effect more pronounced than I did. Okay, you can make your cowl effect more pronounced than I did, or you can make it just like I did. I worked with the down length of 18 inches. Yes, I worked with the down length of 18 inches. So you can do 15 inches, you can do 14 inches, because it's going to be a slit. And then I will connect more like a triangular shape. Yes, I'll connect it all the way to meet with my armpit point. Now the armhole point. Now the thing is, it's a cowl design, it's more like a cowl design. Okay, so that is your guide. Then I'll go ahead and mark out my neck, which is my back neck. I'm using 3 by 1 inch, and then I'll go ahead and mark the length of my front neck, which I used by 12 inches, 3 by 12 inches, and then I came out by 2 inches to connect to that 3 inches point. Meanwhile, for the rest of this neck openings, I'm going to be marking 2 inches all the way down. Now if you know this design, you will know that the front is always open, and most people prefer to do it as a kimono piece, or just like I did mine with a covered collar or a covered shawl. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just mark that all the way down, and then when I'm done, I will do the same markings at the back of this fabric, just so that I note where my pleat effects is taking place. So I'll do the same thing I did on the front to the back. Now this is just so that it will be easy to fold in my material when it is time for it. When I'm done with all my markings, I'll just go ahead and cut out everything that I'm working with. Kindly note that your agbada is or can be smaller than the one that I created. Okay, your agbada can be smaller, it can be bigger than this, depending on the width of your fabric, because the width of your fabric will determine how big it will be. Okay, now I'll just go ahead and now separate my fabric, separating the front from the back, so that I can open my front neck. Now if you don't separate the front from your back, you will end up cutting both the back and the front to have an opening, and you do not want that. So when you are done opening your back neckline, make sure that you separate front and back, just like I did. Then I'll go ahead and just make sure that these lines are well pronounced, so that it will be easy for me, to outline and connect to the front, back to front, back to front. Remember that this pleat is extended from the front and going towards the back, so you have to draw that line to meet with the back and to also meet with the front. Okay, now when I'm done with this, I will just notch that part, because that is where I would fix my belt. Yes, because this kaftan has a belt for the waist tightening. Okay, so that is where I'll be fixing in my belt, though this marking is not really necessary, because you will still do that while sewing. Then I'll go ahead and open out my front. Remember that the front is going to be opened, and most people do theirs like a what do they call it, most people do theirs like a kimono. Yeah, but we're doing ours as a complete gown set. Okay, so now I am done with my cutting. I've cut out the neck and everything. I will just go ahead and iron out these two parts together. Now it is advisable to just press it together and use your pin to hold it, so that the sewing process will be really easy. So yeah, you can see that I've pinned the parts that I'm working with. Remember that we did a total of 7 inches, and if I fold into 2, I will have 3.5 inch for my pleats. So this is what I have here for my pleats. So when I'm done with my ironing, I'll go ahead and start my sewing work. Now I use the leftover from the sides of this kaftan to work as my neck finishing. So this will be what I'll use for my neckline finishing or my collar finishing in front for my kaftan. Okay, and then I went ahead to first of all prepare my belt. I worked with a belt length of 40 inches and then the width of 2 inches. So you can make yours as long as you want or as short as you want, but try not to make it too long, so that it is not falling off or showing at the edge of your client's dress. So the first thing I'm going to do is first off sewing out these pleats. Yes, so I'll first of all go ahead and sew my pleats. I'll first of all go ahead and sew the parts that I folded together, which I am using to form my pleats. And while doing that, I will advise you to get your chalk and your tape, so that you follow the 3.5 inch or whatever inch you choose to work with. I'll advise you to work with your tape, just so that you have a straight line. Okay, so I went ahead to sew it all up to the end on both sides, and when I'm done, this is what it should look like. Okay, this is what you should have when you're done sewing it on both sides. And then while I'm done sewing, I went ahead to prepare my sleeves. Remember that the edge of our sleeves have an elastic. Yes, it has an elastic, so I'll be working with this elastic on both sides of the sleeves. And we know how to fix this, right? So you can either choose to double fold and close up, then pass in your elastic with a safety pin, or you can choose to put in your elastic and stitch it to the end while sewing. But just remember that whichever method you do, make sure that you use your pin or your machine to hold down the edge before you pull your elastic, so that you don't pull and your elastic is coming out to the other side. So after preparing my elastic and passing it in, I will just go ahead and shape this bubu to the end. Yes, I'll go ahead and shape this bubu to the end. Now, don't forget that this outfit is really lovely. So if you're looking for an idea on what to sew for your Thanksgiving service or your Christmas service, something simple and easygoing, I'd recommend this design. Now, when I'm done stitching both sides, the next thing I'm going to do is to sew up my belt. Now, ensure that you sew your belt immediately after the pleats, and also make sure you stitch it in a part where when you cover your pleated shoulder or your pleated design, it is covering the stitch that you just did. Okay, so you just make sure to sew immediately after your pleats. Please don't sew on top of the pleated part. Just push the pleats out and then sew immediately after your pleat so that you can have that waist snatch effect. So now, after fixing that, the last thing I'll be doing is to sew out these pieces together. Now, I had a total of 2.5 or 3 inches on both sides. Yes, 3 inches on both sides, and I went ahead to sew in 1/2 inch. Remember that I am managing this fabric, so I am doing a joining connection. But if you are working with a sufficient amount of fabric, I will advise that you work with a width of 5 inches. Yes, work with a width of 5 inches, and then measure all around your kaftan, from the neck to the hem part to the whole dress on both sides. That will be the length of this collar you will be attaching. That will be the length of the collar you'll be attaching, and then the width should be 5 inches. Now, when you are done, you would go ahead and you can either hair stay it, depends on the fabric you're working with. You can either interface it or you work with it just like I did. I worked with this one like this because the brocade fabric was quite thick. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and mark out where the slit opening will start from and where the neckline will start from. Now, I ended up using, for the neckline, I ended up coming down by 12.5 inches, and then for the slits, it is absolutely your preference. Okay, you do not want it to start from your knee point because that is not the design, but if you do want that, that is absolutely fine. Now, this is what it should look like when you are done. Remember that you're working with the length of your whole kimono together or your whole dress together, and then sewing in the middle. Now, if you worked with a plain fabric, remember that you're going to place that fabric in 2 pieces, in a double piece, just like I did. We're replacing that fabric in a doubled piece. So this is what I have here, and I'll just go ahead and trim off the excesses. Yes, any excess I have, I will be cutting it off because I want to have 2.5 inch on both sides. Remember that we took out 2 inches all the way down on this kaftan, so I'm going to be sewing out 1/2 inch to replace back the 2 inches we took. Yes, so this is our 2.5 inch on both sides, and then I'll be pinning it all around this kaftan and stitching by 1/2 inch all the way. Now, it is advisable to pin it and make sure that the center back is connected to the center back of your dress. Make sure that the center back is connected to the center back of your dress so that you do not finish and then the neck is on one corner. Yes, so please make sure that you do all of that. You check everything before going ahead to sew. So as you can see at this point, I had to do an extra joining because the fabric or my collar was not meeting to the length, though I added like an extra 8 inches or thereabouts before it's, met with the end. So I would just advise that you use, if you have sufficient fabric, please do not do this process if you have sufficient fabric. So thank you so much for watching. This is me after fixing the collar. This is what our outfit looks like. Remember that I always emphasize neat finishing, neat sewing and all. So this is what our final result is, and you can see how beautiful the client slayed the dress. Thank you so much for watching. See you on my next video. I hope you learned a thing or two. I don't know if you'll be trying this method, or you can do the other method where you just fix in your collar all around and then match on one side. That works very perfectly as well, but I chose to do this method. All right, thank you so much for watching. See you on my next video. Bye.